of America knows the DOJ continues to be influenced by politics. That's why they elected the outsider president.
We've got to get to the bottom of the corruption, the conspiracy, the collusion, and the cover-up that's going on in the Justice Department.
The Justice Department confirms to Judicial Watch that no hearings were conducted regarding the FISA surveillance of Carter Page.
It raises questions about, we've got the initial corruption of the warrants themselves, but the courts we're relying on to provide oversight.
The tears flowed at this last public event to remember John McCain before his Sunday burial.
The America of John McCain is generous and welcoming and bold. The America of John McCain has no need to be made great again because America was always great.
The Trump administration plans to withhold more than 100,000 pages of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh's records. Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings with the Senate Judiciary Committee set to begin next week.
37 on the ground. It's touchdown.
You take me higher than I've ever been before. My feet don't touch the floor. We'll fly. The sky is the limit.
6 a.m. DJ playing a song about college football.
We're just not young enough.
We're not young enough.
I bet if you ask my team,
but
they know exactly who that
you're
is.
probably right, but Ed, you said the word college football. Wasn't it beautiful just to listen to the ambient noise of football yesterday?
And the grilling, which we're going to do today since it's like the last
I
Sunday
grilled
of summer.
yesterday.
We're grilling
100%.
Alpine
Absolutely.
What did you do?
Some steaks, some great Costco steaks. You know, Costco has great
They actually really do.
prime steaks. And I made them. It was wonderful.
Steaks are cheap. Steaks are good right now.
They're
People
not-
are celebrating, and we're going to do that today on the show.
Absolutely, because it's Labor Day weekend, and the labor market is up. That's
right.
the way I'm going to spin it.
Absolutely.
Life is good.
And so it's been, it's the last weekend of summer, as we mentioned, some celebration, but also remembrance this weekend. Going into the weekend, remember Aretha Franklin's funeral. We talked about that. And John McCain, a celebration of his life, his legacy all weekend, remembering Senator McCain, his family, colleagues, even political opponents, paying their final respects.
A moving tribute to the maverick of the Senate at Washington's National Cathedral.
Our own Garrett Tenney is live in Washington, looking ahead to McCain's final farewell. Garrett, good morning.
Hey, good morning, y'all. Today, Senator John McCain will be laid to rest at a place very close to his heart, his alma mater, the U.S. Naval Academy. Now, this will be a private ceremony with his family and friends, and following that ceremony, McCain will be buried next to his best friend from the Academy, Admiral Chuck Larson. Now, this comes after several days of moving tributes for the late senator. On Saturday, his casket left the U.S. Capitol for the National Cathedral, but it stopped along the way at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, where his wife, Cindy, laid a wreath. Now, at the funeral service, his daughter, Meghan McCain, paid tribute to her father's life of service.
Like so many other heroes, you leave us draped in the flag you loved. You defended it, you sacrificed it, you have always honored it.
While President Trump did not attend the funeral, his predecessors did. And along with Meghan McCain, there were several remarks that many interpreted as subtle and not so subtle shots at the current commander-in-chief.
So much of our politics, our public life, our public discourse can seem small and mean and petty. John called on us to be bigger than that.
Perhaps above all, John detested the abuse of power, could not abide bigots and swaggering despots.
The America of John McCain has no need to be made great again because America was always great.
Now, President Trump was playing golf at Trump National during the funeral, but yesterday evening he tweeted about trade in the FBI and posted what some viewed as a response, writing in all caps, "Make America Great Again." So this rivalry, even in death, continues. Back to y'all.
All right, Garrett.
Wow. It was an emotional funeral. I mean, you can understand how Meghan, clearly had a lot of emotion. You felt like at points she was feeling angry, and understandable given some of the harsh words that, were said about her father during the campaign. But others tried to take shots as well. Here's one from Jeff Flake, Senator Jeff Flake. He tweeted out,
this photo.
Ask decency wins. And he took a picture there of George Bush and the Obamas.
I don't mean to make light of it, but you take a picture with Bill Clinton, usually decency wins is the caption. Just saying. Listen, there was a lot of fitting things to be said about Senator McCain. I have a lot of reverence for him. I appreciate a grieving daughter, a grieving family. Like, all of that is legitimate. So you look at it with that sympathy when you watch it. At the same time, no one changes their political view based on, I think, speeches and eulogies. If you're shamed into saying, how dare you support someone like Donald Trump or his views because John McCain was the standard bearer of goodness. John McCain was a good man who did a lot of great things for this country. We can also be in a different chapter where different tools and different leaders can take the mantle and carry forward what America represents. And I think that's the dissidence that existed yesterday.
And it's curious, this just seems odd that Jeff Flake feels like a funeral is a place for winners and losers. That somehow he believes these are the winners and there's a loser somewhere else. And I also am struck by the idea that people like Jeff Flake, Barack Obama want to tell us that the funeral yesterday was all about unity. But they didn't invite President Trump, they didn't invite Sarah Palin, and they decided to take some shots. So is that really the right place for that? I think it was the place to celebrate John McCain's awesome life, awesome legacy, and I was struck also by Barack Obama spending a lot of time in this eulogy talking about himself. Talking about John and I both felt like America is the indispensable nation, and John and I and what we think and thought. It's about the man who passed away. It's about his awesome life and legacy, not about yours.
I'll just quick add. I admire his service to the country. I also admire his pro-life record. I'm sure a lot of the elites that were gleeful at some of the shots taken at President Trump don't want to remember that record of John McCain, which was
well, he will be buried
well.
today at his beloved Annapolis at the Naval Academy, where he obviously graduated from, and so a wonderful and appropriate tribute for him today. Let us know what you think about his life and legacy, friends.
But while this was all happening, you sent me an article, or I think a lot of us, you sent from your favorite newspaper, the New York Times.
My favorite.
Your favorite, talking about new revelations of how deep the connection was between Russia and Bruce Orr and some of the folks looking to the Trump campaign, and the extent to which they were willing to talk to some pretty unsavory Russian characters.
Like Oleg Deripaska, who is a Russian oligarch.
Say that 3 times.
Yes, Deripaska, who allegedly has ties to Russian organized crime. And we learned from the New York Times in this morning's paper that the ties between Bruce Orr at the Obama Justice Department and this shadowy Russian figure are a lot deeper. The Times headline, "Agents tried to flip Russian oligarchs. The fallout spread to Trump." And it gets into the idea that Bruce Orr and others, again, Bruce Orr, a narcotics official, we believe from this New York Times piece that dating back maybe to as far as 2007, he had been looking at Russian organized crime. That may be a justifiable reason why he knew about Deripaska. However, fast forward more than a decade later, and he's trying to help flip this Russian oligarch in order to get dirt on Paul Manafort and ultimately candidate Donald Trump. And you have to wonder, because the New York Times refers to Deripaska as Putin's oligarch. Okay? So it's okay to hang out with Putin's buddies when you want to get dirt on Donald Trump. But when now President Trump wants to talk to Putin about Syria and getting help with North Korea, that's all out of bounds. You can't do that.
I thought what was interesting in the article is that this oligarch, I'm not even going to try to say his name, I'm going to just call him Oleg. Oleg had a lot of incentive to cooperate and to come up with the story. I mean, he wanted a visa to come to the United States. He had business interests. He had really bad business blood between him and Manafort, and yet he's told the FBI, I think your theory about Russia collusion here is preposterous.
Yeah, he said there's no there.
This is crazy. And he had every reason to say
he reported back to the Kremlin, I'm trying to be recruited. So clearly this guy wasn't going to be a source. I'm going to go with a Fox News speculation alert here. Maybe it was Bruce Orr who was actually flipped by the Russians.
Yeah.
Just saying. Total speculation. I have no evidence.
And don't forget,
the point is, he's done more to help the Russians' influence on our democracy than this oligarch ever did.
By the way, his wife worked for Fusion GPS as a Russia expert. Of course. He didn't disclose that to a lot of people, a conflict of interest that's a real problem.
Absolutely.
Overnight, meanwhile, another favorite here on the couch, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Ed's favorite socialist.
She's running here in New York for a congressional seat. She's sort of a cause celeb right now on the left. And she's taken this. Remember when last we left her, she was banning the media from a town hall. This wonderful beacon of transparency and openness was saying that the media couldn't come cover her town hall. Even folks on the left were saying this was ridiculous. She had to sort of backpedal. Overnight, she posted this video where she's trying to rally kids to go after President Trump.
I'm the Democratic nominee for Congress out here, so I'm going to go to D.C. We're going to be fighting Trump.
That's crazy. But we need your help. The kids get so excited about it.
Are you going to tell your parents to vote? Yes. Okay. Because I don't like Trump.
I actually love this video because there's so much about Alexandria that is so revealing. She's such a novice that she really tells you the truth about socialism. But parents, this is what socialists do for kids. They don't help kids. They organize kids. They indoctrinate kids. That's what she's doing. That's what social justice warriors like her are best at.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. She's naive. She's talking to these kids. Go talk to your parents. Tell them how much you hate Trump. Clearly, they've heard. I think at one point in the video, someone says, I hear he's going to deport everyone from Puerto Rico. I have to go re-listen to it. No, but that's what the kids have heard. There's so much misinformation. You feed into that misinformation to channel kids to hate your sitting commander-in-chief.
And these kids are so young.
Talk about division.
Block out their faces for privacy reasons because we're not going to show their faces on TV. And yet she feels like she's going to organize them and recruit them.
Well,
go to her Twitter account if you want to see their faces. Because she.
And by the way, there's a lot of people just like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in our public school systems doing the same thing, by the way.
That's a great point.
So we're going to turn now to some headlines, you guys.
Additional headlines.
Yes, another headline. We're going to start with a Fox News alert. Authorities say a terrorist motive is behind the stabbing of 2 American tourists in Amsterdam in an Amsterdam train station. Officers shooting and injuring the suspect, who they say showed signs of extremism. The 19-year-old man is from Afghanistan and he is recovering. Both unidentified Americans are in the Netherlands recovering from their injuries. Wow. President Trump blasting our neighbors to the north. The U.S. and Canada so far failing to come to terms on a new NAFTA deal. President Trump tweeting, "We shouldn't have to buy our friends with bad trade deals and free military protection." The president has already agreed to a new trade agreement with Mexico, and it excludes Canada entirely. The first Saturday slate of college football is in the books. The 9th-ranked Auburn Tigers rally late to beat the 6th-ranked Washington Huskies 21-16 in the only top 10 matchup of the day. I'm going to let Pete do this next one.
Okay, the 12th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish take down the Michigan Wolverines 24-17. I watched the first 3 quarters of that game, didn't close it out. And Penn State, this was a big one. I watched this as well. Narrowly avoids a shocking upset to beat Appalachian State 45-38 in overtime. Penn State was behind. They scored a late touchdown. They brought it to overtime, and they mowed through them in overtime. But Appalachian State didn't think they could win it. No, I mean, you got a top 10 team. You lose your first game, you're out of the national championship hunt.
This is why I let him read the sports headlines, because I have no idea what these guys are.
You know what? I love that. All right, well, moving on. A teen rescued from that Muslim extremist compound in New Mexico, opening up about the horrors inside. What he just revealed to the FBI next.
Interesting, the original judge didn't think there was a lot of trouble there. We'll see. And the media says the booming Trump economy simply won't last.
These numbers bounce around a lot, so that's the president being incredibly confident.
He thinks that there's 4% sustainability. I think that's unlikely.
Our next guest disagrees, and guess what? He has the numbers to prove it.
President and Larry Kudlow just said, this is not a one-time thing, this is here to stay. Is it?
You know, these numbers bounce around a lot, so that's the president being incredibly confident.
The question is sustainability. The graphic said maybe he thinks that there's 4% sustainability. I think that's unlikely.
It's a good number, but also recognize that one quarter does not make a trend.
Those are doubts from so-called experts and the media that President Trump's economy cannot keep on booming.
But our next guest disagrees, and he's here with his predictions. Peter Morici, University of Maryland professor and former chief economist at the U.S. International Trade Commission. Welcome, Peter. Peter.
Good morning.
Good morning. So the president says we're winning, and he thinks this boom can keep going. Media says no. Why do you say he's right?
Let's look at the numbers. Since he's become president, the economy has expanded at about 2.8% per year. During the Obama years, it was less than 2%. He's doing almost 50% better. There's lots of excess capacity out there. There are a lot of people underemployed. If we get the right trade policies so we bring back good paying jobs and shift people out of Starbucks and into factories and jobs like that, we can win. In addition, he's putting in place a lot of training programs, and I think those have great potential.
Professor, but if you look backwards, the predictions were, and we've got, I believe, a full screen for this, that we wouldn't grow anything more than 1.5 or 1.7%. The Federal Reserve in San Francisco predicted that. Yet now here we are in quarterly over 4, annually maybe over 3. What are the ingredients that led from a new normal of less than 2% to something where it's booming?
Tax cuts, deregulation, workforce training, and these trade agreements that we're negotiating. You know, look at the Canada situation. The Canadians want free trade where they send us what they've got, and that's oil. But they won't take our dairy products. That's absurd. You know, and it's not just employing cows. You know, dairy has a lot of processing and so forth. There's a lot of potential there for employment growth, even in factories with dairy. So, you know, but that's an example. The Canadians have been spoiled by Uncle Piggy Bank. And guess what? The appeasement is over. I was so amused yesterday. So amused. The Clinton, Bush, Obama establishment was defeated because they let Americans down. For 2 decades, we grew at less than 2%. People couldn't find decent jobs. They went to school and got indoctrinated instead of educated. So they stood on top of his coffin, they stood on top of John McCain's coffin, and criticized Donald Trump for their own failures. That's why he's there.
It is very interesting, and you know, they said that all those jobs were never coming back, the ones that you're talking about, and I'll tell you what, in my district, a lot of people, a lot of employers are begging for workers. In fact, they're willing to train them. If you're willing to pass a drug test, if you can pass the drug test, you don't even need to have the training, they'll pay for it.
Absolutely. Businesses are now lowering their experience requirements and training people. And the Labor Department, under Ivanka Trump's leadership, I mean, she's been very instrumental in this, is assembling apprenticeship programs across a broad range of industries. This isn't just welders and masons. It's things like in banking and so forth, where college graduates who, frankly, got nothing studying women's studies, international affairs, and I hate Americanism, can basically go back to school in a job where they get $15 an hour. The University of Maryland doesn't have that. Basically, they can get $15 an hour, which is better than what they're earning at Starbucks, you know, pouring coffee and serving it to liberals. And in the process, come out the other end after 2 years and get $60,000 a year. I think that's pretty good economics, don't you?
Absolutely. Professor, the savant of the left, Paul Krugman, of course, predicted that if President Trump gets...
Well, you know, Paul.
The savant of the establishment that the economy would tank. How sustainable is this boom?
Well, for one thing, you know, you shouldn't believe Paul Krugman and most economists. If you put them all in a room and somehow or other you could ask them anonymously how they vote, they'd all be liberal Democrats. This is quite sustainable because we have a large pool of underutilized workers, people with decent educations, general educations, but not specific skills, who can be retrained and moved into higher productivity jobs. But the key is you've got to make it attractive to invest in the United States, and that means getting rid of not regulation that protects people, but regulation that just creates paperwork. And that's what we're doing by getting decent trade agreements so we can export what we do well, in addition to buying from the world what they have to offer, and expanding these training programs so people can get it done.
Professor, we got to leave it right there. Thank you for your energy and expertise this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter.
Take care.
All right, more Fox and Friends on the other side. Stick with us. Welcome back. Couple of quick headlines for you. 13 people are hurt and 2 missing after a violent boat collision. A search for the missing boaters at a California park has been suspended overnight. The popular boating destination along the Colorado River is about 300 miles east of Los Angeles. One of the boats sank. The 2 missing boaters are presumed, unfortunately, to have gone down with it. And in another story, a suspected MS-13 gang member arrested and charged with sexually assaulting a child. The NYPD bringing the 18-year-old in overnight, accusing him of breaking into the 11-year-old girl's bedroom at her family's apartment. Surveillance video was used to track him down.
Wow.
Ed.
Horrible story. Thanks, Pete. It's one of the media's favorite catchphrases on the president ever since he was elected.
The walls are closing in. I think at this point, the walls are spinning.
The legal walls are closing in on Donald Trump.
It feels like we are finally at a tipping point. The walls are closing in on President Trump.
The walls, meanwhile, are closing in on the President of the United States.
The walls closing in on President Donald Trump.
So are the walls really closing in, or is the media just wishing it so? Here to debate, Democratic strategist Rochelle Ritchie and Republican strategist Kimberly Klacik. Good morning, both of you.
Good morning.
So, Rochelle, it just seems like a lot of your friends at MSNBC and elsewhere are just hoping, they're praying that those walls are going to close in.
Well, look, I just have to add to it. The walls are closing in on Donald Trump. We're seeing it happen every single day. And let me tell you something. When our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, they did not say that freedom of speech only counts when people like what you have to say. They did not say freedom of press only counts when the news favors one political party or president over the other. And quite frankly, this president has consistently assassinated the credibility of media outlets and journalists any chance he gets, whether it's calling them the enemy of the people or using his played out insult of fake news. And quite frankly, right now, it seems like the only thing that is unbelievable and lacking integrity is the president.
All right, well, we're going to get to his attacks on the media in the second part of the segment. Let's stick on this part, Kimberly. Rochelle is very nice. I just saw her in the green room. We're having a little coffee, but here she immediately jumps in, and she's hoping it. She's praying it. She says the walls are closing in on the president.
Yeah, so let's put this in perspective. When pundits on air talk about the demise of the president, they're actually wishing for the demise of many things. They're wishing for the demise of 4.2% GDP growth. They're wishing for the demise of growing wages. They're wishing for the demise of the lowest unemployment rate for Black Americans. There is a high school student named Khalik Rodriguez that explains this to grown adults every single day on Twitter. It's not rocket science. The left has been throwing checks at President Trump that they can't cash since the night he got elected. Let us never forget how they said the stock market would crash if he were to step into office.
All right. Let me just give you 30 seconds each on the media part of this. So, Rochelle, you were saying how the president attacks the media for no reason. Let's get specific and not general. Sure. He was going after the media in the last few days, particularly CNN, over a specific story where they said, again, the walls are closing in because they said Michael Cohen was going to flip and he was going to say that the president knew about that Trump Tower meeting. Turns out one of their sources was Lanny Davis, and he's recanted. Why can't CNN, why can't you say, you know what, the president's actually right? That story was wrong.
Well, because the story was not wrong, and the only reason that Lanny Davis is recanting his story is because he's been exposed as a snitch. So that's the only reason that he's coming out and saying anything.
No, maybe the story isn't true.
The story is true. 91% of the media coverage, granted, is considered negative of Donald Trump. But quite frankly, it's not negative. It's warranted. When the president is paying off his extramarital affairs, when he's having a bromance with Putin and Zelensky, when he is playing seesaw with the American flag
on the kitchen sink at him, and I gave you a specific example, of a story that's not true.
When he is playing seesaw with the American flag on top of the White House because he can't put aside his petty feelings to honor a war hero and a beloved senator, it's warranted.
All right, seesaws, bromances. Kimberly, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I think it's funny. That story is untrue, but this is how ironic it is. President Obama promised hope and change. President Trump is doing something about immigration. He's doing something with foreign leaders. He's doing a lot of things that's bringing hope. Now, President Trump is also the opposite of President Obama, which is change. So maybe the left should understand what they wish for, they might just get. President Obama delivered. President Trump is hope and change. Congratulations.
Right. Kimberly, Rochelle, we're going to have another cup of coffee in the green room. We're going to talk this through. Thanks for coming in. All right, take care. The Trump administration making another move to put America first, cutting hundreds of millions of dollars in aid to a country that harbors terrorists. Plus, one Democratic congressman may be out of office, but his problems, they're not done yet. He's got a $12,000 legacy to deal with next. And where's the beef? Americans are cashing in on the booming economy that you just heard about, and they're getting ready to grill this Labor Day weekend. Coming up. Wait, I think the headline is the seersucker suit had an appearance in that.
Oh, it's coming back tomorrow, Ed.
It is?
Yeah, it's Labor Day.
There is so much Fox and Friends footage of Pete eating, especially meat.
Yeah, well, of course, because there's nothing better than red meat. And I know all of you feel the exact same way at home. If you're waking up and you don't have steak in your fridge or hamburgers or whatever, you're thinking about when am I going to go to the store today to get it? It's because this weekend I'm going to be grilling out.
Bloomberg has a story saying the following: a buzzing economy and low U.S. unemployment is a boon for beef, typically considered a premium meat. And so that's why we're grilling it today.
But we just had The Economist come on in the last segment talk about how America's booming and how they expect it to keep going, and Americans are responding by buying steak.
Of course, why would you eat chicken or something else when you can eat a cow?
Right.
When you could have steak, and they're buying better steak and more steak. I mean,
and chicken sales are actually suffering because Americans are eating
well, should I have chicken or should I have a steak? How about steak?
And it's
I got more money in my pocket.
Beef consumption expected to rise by 1.4% this year.
The folks at Tyson Foods would like to talk to you. All right.
And I love Chick-fil-A too, but come on.
Yeah.
But it's very true. When you're feeling good about it, hey, let's throw some steaks on the grill.
And we're going to do that later in the show, Pete.
Are we?
Yes, we are. We're going to do that, and you're going to get another chance to eat. We're going to get more footage of Pete eating.
And let's be honest, you'll eat steak whether the economy is good or not. That's your thing.
This is recession-proof at some level.
Well, we got to move to some headlines here. A teen saved from an extremist compound in New Mexico says he was trained for jihad.
Oh, great.
The FBI says the 13-year-old was taught how to rapidly reload guns and hand-to-hand combat in order to kill, quote, non-believers. Wow. 5 suspects were arrested after 11 starved kids and the remains of a 3-year-old body were found during the raid last month.
There was a kid found dead there, and yet a judge said, these suspects can go. Unbelievable.
Right. It is unbelievable. Talk about a lasting legacy. Former Democrat Congressman Charlie Rangel reportedly owes $12,000 in campaign violations. The longtime New York congressman was slapped with nearly 150 violations in 2014 for illegally posting campaign signs. Each of the $75 penalties went unpaid and now have increased to $82 each with interest. So Rangel, who retired in 2017, says he's now unable to pay the fines. Patriotism on full display. Firefighters in Wisconsin capturing this young man standing all by himself, silently saluting a soldier statue at a veterans memorial. The photo of the unidentified boy going viral. That's Wisconsin for you, by the way.
Sweet. That's really awesome.
And those are your headlines.
Good kid.
Good kid.
Rick, I feel like if we had you on camera after hours, you'd be doing similar things. Just a good American.
Yes,
well, I'm trying to say, Rick, I'm trying to say you're a good American.
Thank you. I mean, something like that, sure.
Yeah.
Not always just good things, though. Let's be honest. I'm a lot like you, Pete. Let's be very honest. Hey, guys. All right. So tropical season, hurricane season peaks September 10th. We're now into September. By the way, it's called meteorological fall. So generally start to feel like fall. It's not going to be the case right away yet. But take a look at this. A lot of moisture down across parts of the southeastern part of the country, especially, say, Florida and throughout areas of the Central Gulf. This is the radar. We'll put it into motion. Future radar. Heavy rain today across parts of the Central Gulf there. But take a look at this little rotation that goes through this afternoon and overnight into South Florida. We're going to watch that this coming week, moving here across parts of the Northern Gulf. Potentially some sort of development of a tropical system we'll have to watch maybe by Wednesday. If it develops or not, it is going to bring a lot of moisture in across parts of the Central Gulf again. So get ready for that. Here's another storm out there. This is Tropical Storm Florence. For now, staying out to sea. But I tell you guys, hurricane season picking up. The way our pattern is set up across the U.S., anything that does form right now has a good chance of making it to the U.S. So just everybody start watching. We haven't talked about that as much lately.
Coming back.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Well, you know what's not coming back? Funding to Pakistan. No, I mean, this is we've talked about this morning quite a bit. I mean, for folks that voted for President Trump and believe that America's interests should be put first, and we've got a lot of longtime allegiances or allies that aren't quite our allies. Well, news broke yesterday that the Trump administration is seeking to take back $300 million of aid that was going to Pakistan, suspending it, hoping that Congress will make it a full-time deal. This comes in addition to
reprogram
$500 million they've already taken away.
Needs for our men and women in uniform. So let's
not
give that money to Pakistan, where it's got real problems with terror, and not cracking down on it. And here's what's important, I think, is that you saw these former presidents yesterday, from Clinton to Bush to Obama, who all talked a good game on this, on getting tough with Pakistan.
Yeah.
And then when it came down to brass tacks, they'd say, well, we still have to give the hard-earned taxpayer money of our viewers back to Pakistan, and oh, by the way, back to the Palestinian Authority, because that aid has been pulled back by President Trump as well. So president after president, Democrat and Republican, said, we're going to get tough with the Palestinians, we're going to get tough with the Pakistanis, with all the harboring of terrorists and whatnot. And then in the end, they still write the checks.
Well, it's funny because people say that Trump doesn't have a political philosophy, but if you look at the tweet that he gave yesterday about Canada, he said, we don't have to buy our friends. And I think that applies to this as well. He's saying, you know what, we're going to help you if you do what you said you were going to do. And he is the defender of the taxpayers' money. And I
if
think
Canada's ripping us off on dairy, they're not. Are they really a friend? Isn't he also saying if you're ripping?
It's like, you want us to open our market, you want to open us to buy from you, and you want your markets to be closed to us. That doesn't make sense. That's not how friends treat each other.
You said the operative phrase, if you do what you said you're going to do. So after 9/11, George W. Bush looked at Musharraf in Pakistan and said, either you're with us or you're against us. Musharraf said, okay, we're with you, kind of winking like we'll do our best. Tons of Islamists, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, harbored in Pakistan, push-pull, trying to get him to do a few things to help us out. A decade and a half later, they're not doing it. Why are we still funding them?
Wasn't
that's where Abbottabad. So exactly.
He's a man of action. I think love
he's a
him
man
or
of
hate
action
him,
who
he
said,
does what he says.
Whatever happened before doesn't mean it's right now. Sorry, no more money for you. So I say, all right.
I like it too, Pete.
Yeah, right. Can we do double? Double. Okay, good. We're just 2 days away from the start of the confirmation hearing for Supreme Court pick Brett Kavanaugh. Pastor Robert Jeffress says this nomination is critical to a key part of President Trump's base, evangelical voters. He's here live, coming up next.
And we've got Labor Day deals just for you. Huge discounts on furniture, fridges, and more. Straight ahead, you hear all those commercials on Labor Day. We're going to tell you which ones are for real.
Good morning again. Some quick headlines caught on camera. Police officers save a woman from a burning home after she frantically calls 911.
Oh, I can't even see. Can you please send somebody, please? Sorry, I can't see no more. I try to act all smoked up. About the window, please.
The Georgia cops pulling her out of a window. Before firefighters arrived, authorities say a pot on the stove started the fire. And watch as a woman smashes a bus window during a fit of road rage in Washington, D.C. Oh my, she actually hit the bus driver with her car multiple times after he called 911. He is expected to be okay, thankfully, but she, thankfully, facing charges.
That's not road rage, that's road insanity.
Oh my gosh, she's laying on the ground now. Oh boy.
Well, all right, well, the confirmation hearings for Supreme Court pick Brett Kavanaugh, they begin this week.
And our next guest says this nomination is critical to a key constituency of President Trump's base, evangelicals. Here to explain, Pastor Robert Jeffress of First Baptist Dallas and a Fox News contributor. He's also the author of Choosing the Extraordinary Life. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you, Rachel.
So we know that evangelicals were critical in the 2016 election. And one of the main reasons that they went to the polls for President Trump was Supreme Court justices. Are they going to be as motivated in the midterm because of Kavanaugh and potentially more justices, at least maybe one more after Kavanaugh?
No, absolutely. I think they will be more motivated in the 2018 midterms to continue to support this president. And look, Rachel, you're right. I mean, exit polls from 2016 show that the primary reason evangelicals voted for President Trump by the widest margin of any candidate in history is because of his commitment to a conservative judiciary. And he's fulfilling that promise beyond anyone's wildest imaginations. And look, this is why the courts are so important to evangelical Christians. All of the recent assaults against the issues we believe in dearly, like the right to life and the right to religious liberties, these attacks haven't come from the executive or the legislative branches. They've come from the judicial branch. Activist judges for the last 60 years have been involved in the campaign to create imaginary rights for some Americans at the expense of very real rights of other Americans. You know, for example, removing prayer and Bible reading from the schools in 1962 and 63, that was based on an imaginary right that people ought to be free from offense from religious expression. There's no right in the Constitution for that, but there is a very real right for the freedom of religious expression. And that's why people are excited about Judge Kavanaugh. He is a judge who will interpret the law by what the Constitution actually says instead of by what liberals wish it said.
Pastor, you're right. He's also going through meeting with senators, some of which are wary about his nomination. It's moderate Republicans. They're asking about Roe v. Wade. He's talking about it being settled law. Any concerns about him on that issue or others relating to evangelicals?
None whatsoever. And look, you bring up another good issue, Roe v. Wade. That's another example of what I was talking about. Search the Constitution. There is no right to an abortion in the 14th Amendment or any other amendment, but there is an inherent right to life. But look, I was at the White House Monday, had an opportunity to talk to the president, the vice president, other administration officials, and without quoting anyone directly, I can tell you the White House is very encouraged by the prospect for Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation.
We only have 30 seconds, but you mentioned you were at the White House, and at that meeting, there were other evangelical leaders there, and as you know, what leaked from that is a tape suggesting that the president said that if Democrats take back the House, there's going to be violence in the streets. I know you believe that's not exactly how it came out. Can you quickly explain what really happened at that meeting?
Yes, what exactly happened was the president was emphasizing the fact that if the Democrats take control of the Congress, they're going to undo dramatically and quickly all the progress that this great president has made. That's why we've got to turn out in 2018.
All right. Pastor Jeffress, we appreciate it. Got the new book, Choosing the Extraordinary Life. Check it out. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you, Pastor.
Appreciate it.
All right. Meanwhile, the president doubling down on his trade threats with Canada. His new warnings for Justin Trudeau and Congress. That's coming up.
Plus, are you looking for some Labor Day shopping deals? How about 75% off some patio furniture? Sounds pretty good. We've got the holiday bargains for you coming up next. He's sweating. He's working so hard. 75% off some patio furniture. Sounds pretty good. We've got the holiday bargains for you coming up next. He's sweating. He's working so hard.
Good morning again. Some quick headlines caught on camera. Police officers save a woman from a burning home after she frantically calls 911.
Oh, I can't even see. Can you please send somebody, please? Sorry, I can't see no more. I try to act all smoked up. About the window, please.
The Georgia cops pulling her out of a window. Before firefighters arrived, authorities say a pot on the stove started the fire. And watch as a woman smashes a bus window during a fit of road rage in Washington, D.C. Oh my, she actually hit the bus driver with her car multiple times after he called 911. He is expected to be okay, thankfully, but she, thankfully, facing charges.
That's not road rage, that's road insanity.
Oh my gosh, she's laying on the ground now. Oh boy.
Well, all right, well, the confirmation hearings for Supreme Court pick Brett Kavanaugh, they begin this week.
And our next guest says this nomination is critical to a key constituency of President Trump's base, evangelicals. Here to explain, Pastor Robert Jeffress of First Baptist Dallas and a Fox News contributor. He's also the author of Choosing the Extraordinary Life. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you, Rachel.
So we know that evangelicals were critical in the 2016 election. And one of the main reasons that they went to the polls for President Trump was Supreme Court justices. Are they going to be as motivated in the midterm because of Kavanaugh and potentially more justices, at least maybe one more after Kavanaugh?
Oh, absolutely. I think they will be more motivated in the 2018 midterms to continue to support this president. And look, Rachel, you're right. I mean, exit polls from 2016 show that the primary reason evangelicals voted for President Trump by the widest margin of any candidate in history is because of his commitment to a conservative judiciary. And he's fulfilling that promise beyond anyone's wildest imaginations. And look, this is why the courts are so important to evangelical Christians. All of the recent assaults against the issues we believe in dearly, like the right to life and the right to religious liberties, these attacks haven't come from the executive or the legislative branches. They've come from the judicial branch. Activist judges for the last 60 years have been involved in the campaign to create imaginary rights for some Americans at the expense of very real rights of other Americans. You know, for example, removing prayer and Bible reading from the schools in 1962 and 63. That was based on an imaginary right that people ought to be free from offense from religious expression. There's no right in the Constitution for that, but there is a very real right for the freedom of religious expression. And that's why people are excited about Judge Kavanaugh. He is a judge who will interpret the law by what the Constitution actually says instead of by what liberal